You just bought your first private jet. No lines, no gate agents, no taking your shoes off for a stranger with a wand. You pull up to a private terminal, walk up a short flight of stairs, and your wheels up within 20 minutes of leaving your house. For a moment, it feels like you've bought yourself more hours in every single day. So why, a year later, does the plane that was supposed to save you time end up costing you more than most people's homes while sitting in a hangar for most of the year? That question is really the entire economics of owning a private jet, because unlike almost anything else people buy to feel successful, a jet isn't really an investment. It's closer to owning a second full-time employee that happens to be able to fly, one that gets paid whether it goes to work or not. So let's break down what this actually costs, how the ownership math really works, and when, if ever, the math actually works in your favor. The appeal is obvious enough. Commercial flying, even at the front of the plane, still means security lines, delayed departures, and airports built around everyone else's schedule, not yours. A private jet collapses all of that into a single decision. When you want to leave, you leave. It opens up thousands of smaller airports closer to where you're actually going. There's also the simple truth that a private jet remains one of the most visible signals of arrival in business, a marker that says you've reached a level where waiting is someone else's problem now. There's real utility in it too, since hours in the air become hours to work, sleep, or hold a meeting in complete privacy, instead of a stranger's elbow fighting you for the armrest. Owning a jet doesn't mean just one thing either. Full ownership means buying the entire aircraft outright. Fractional ownership means buying a share, a portion of the hours on a specific plane, similar to a timeshare with wings. Jet cards let you prepay for a set number of flight hours on a fleet you never actually own. And chartering means renting a plane for a single trip with no ownership at all. Some full owners even hire a management company to charter their jet out to other flyers when they're not using it, turning an idle asset into at least some offsetting income. The purchase price alone spans an enormous range. A smaller, light jet might start around $3 to $9 million. A mid-sized jet often runs somewhere between $10 and $25 million. A large cabin, long-range aircraft can easily clear $30 to $70 million or more. Financing works similarly to any other aircraft loan, typically requiring a down payment in the range of 15 to 20%, with the balance spread over 10 to 15 years. But the purchase price, as painful as it sounds, is often the easiest number in this entire business to plan for. It's the cost of everything after the purchase that catches new owners off guard. Before the plane ever leaves the ground, fixed costs start accumulating. 2 full-time pilots, sometimes a flight attendant, hangar space, insurance, recurrent training to keep the crew certified, and a management company to handle scheduling and compliance. Combined, these fixed costs alone frequently run somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million a year, regardless of whether the jet flies once or 100 times. Then come the variable costs that only show up once you actually fly: fuel, landing and handling fees, and maintenance reserves set aside for every hour in the air. Here's what the brochures don't dwell on. Aircraft depreciate, often sharply in the first few years, and certain scheduled maintenance checks, required by law regardless of how carefully the plane has been flown, can ground it for weeks and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single event. Engines eventually need overhauling. Avionics need upgrading as regulations change. Fuel prices swing with global markets, and insurance costs can rise sharply after even a single incident anywhere in an owner's fleet. And the resale market for private jets can turn soft quickly, meaning the aircraft that felt like an asset on the way in can feel a lot more like a liability on the way out. None of these costs depend on usage. They arrive on the calendar, not the flight log. Crew turnover adds its own quiet cost as well, since a new pilot pairing often means added training time before the aircraft can fly again. Which brings us to the number that actually matters here: cost per flight hour. Spread those fixed costs, the loan payment and the crew salaries, over just 50 or 100 hours a year, and the true cost per hour can dwarf what that same mid-sized jet would cost to simply charter for that same trip. only at a genuinely high number of flight hours a year, often cited somewhere north of 200 or 300, does full ownership start to beat chartering on pure cost. Let's run the numbers on a mid-sized jet purchased around $15 million. Fixed costs, crew, hangar, insurance, and management might run close to $900,000 a year. Loan payments on the aircraft could add another $1.5 million. Fly that plane a modest 150 hours a year at roughly $3,000 an hour in fuel and maintenance. Variable costs add $450,000 more. Total annual cost lands close to $2.8 million, or nearly $19,000 for every single hour spent in the air, several times what that same mid-sized jet would cost to simply charter for that same trip. The most common mistake is buying based on ego rather than an honest count of actual flight hours. Owners frequently buy an aircraft one size larger than their real mission requires, and then discover the fixed costs scale with the size of the plane, not how often it's used. Others skip building any reserve for the scheduled maintenance events they know are coming, treating a routine, predictable expense as an unwelcome surprise. Some also skip properly vetting the management company running the aircraft day to day, only discovering later how much scheduling quality and crew reliability can vary between operators. The industry has shifted too. Fractional ownership and jet card programs have grown considerably, aimed squarely at people who want the access without the fixed cost burden of full ownership. Environmental scrutiny of private aviation is rising, along with interest in sustainable aviation fuel, and the charter market itself has become flexible enough that it now quietly outperforms ownership on cost alone for anyone flying fewer than a couple hundred hours a year. The owners who make this work treat the jet like a tool matched precisely to their actual travel pattern, not a trophy. They track utilization honestly. Many charter the aircraft out through a management company during downtime to offset fixed costs, and they also build maintenance reserves proactively instead of reactively, treating scheduled downtime as a cost of doing business rather than a crisis. And most importantly, they run the actual cost per hour math before buying, rather than after. So who does this actually suit? It suits people or companies flying several hundred hours a year, often to smaller airports commercial airlines simply don't serve, where the time saved has a real calculable value. It suits far fewer people buying primarily for status, flying occasionally, for whom fractional ownership, a jet card, or simple chartering would deliver the exact same convenience for a small fraction of the cost. So, is owning a private jet actually worth it? For the overwhelming majority of buyers, the honest answer is no, at least not as a financial decision. The math only works at very high, consistent utilization, or when an hour of someone's time is worth more than anyone will admit out loud. For everyone else, chartering delivers the identical experience without the fixed costs quietly running in the background 365 days a year. In the end, nobody goes broke buying the jet. They go broke keeping it ready to fly on the one day a year they actually need it.